HRN listeners. As we celebrate our 15th year, we are deepening our commitment to giving voice to the next generation of food systems storytellers, and we need your help. Our internship and fellowship programs help activate new possibilities for underrepresented and underestimated young people through experiential journalism, audio engineering, and production training. Through these unique programs, HRN helps food equity stewards build essential workforce readiness skills that expand their potential and foster economic mobility. Please consider supporting these critical programs. And with a minimum donation, you can be entered to win a dinner for two at an amazing restaurant in one of 8 cities and tickets to a concert at a great venue in one of those cities. We have incredible partners across the country who have donated, as they also share our passion for helping to educate the next generation of food systems storytellers. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. And make sure you donate before March 31st. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Square. If you run a restaurant or business, Square has the tools to help you stay connected to customers, shift your business, and navigate this uniquely challenging time. Learn more at square.com/go/beer sessions.
HRN is offering complimentary business memberships to 50 Black, Indigenous, people of color-owned food businesses this summer. The deadline to apply is July 31st. Each business membership, a $500 value, is an advertising opportunity that will allow businesses disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 to connect with HRN's listening community and promote their work. To apply and review the terms and conditions, go to heritageradionetwork.org/BIZ.
Hey, welcome to Beer Sessions Radio on the Heritage Radio Network. It's Tuesday, June 30th, 2020. We're still in the middle of COVID. A lot of things are going on, but we're recording every week remotely while our studio is closed. So we have some great guests today. Originally, we were going to talk about Beer Without Beards, a great women in beer festival. Again, due to COVID, that festival is not happening in New York City. But we have 3 guests who met last year at it. So let's have them introduce themselves. And first, I want to give a shout out to heritageradionetwork.org. It's a summer drive, so you can become a member at heritageradionetwork.org/donate. So let's go around the room. Let's start with Kim Harris.
Hi, I'm Kim Harris. I'm one of the owners of Harlem Hops. We are a craft beer bar located in Harlem on Adam Clayton Powell between 133rd and 134th Street. We just celebrated our 2-year anniversary just on the 9th of June. And it's been a fun and exciting adventure dealing with this whole COVID situation. And I think I covered the most part.
That's great. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to talk a lot with you tonight. Let's get Sarah from Origin Malt.
Hey, my name's Sarah Haggerty. I'm with Origin Malt. We are centered in Columbus, Ohio, but we grow barley from the East Coast all the way west to Illinois. We grow a type of winter barley that's a descendant of a popular brewing variety called Maris Otter. That product we have malted, and we are building our malt house here in Ohio. And I have been out in New York several times to visit customers and also to participate in Beers Without Beards. So it's great to be back on and talk with you, all you ladies, and Jimmy.
One thing about Beer Without Beards, I remember meeting Grace Whites several years ago. She was a grad student, and she was starting to work with hop culture, and she was just working on that event. How did you each learn about Beer Without Beards, and anything you want to say about it? Let's start with Sarah, because that's how I met you last year.
Yeah. I was in town last year. It was a great festival and a great coming together of the community out there. We met Grace actually out at the Craft Brewers Conference in Denver last year. So it was a great opportunity not only to meet a lot of people in our industry, but also to meet great individuals who are doing work in the sector of bringing women into the beer industry and popularizing it, I think, a little bit more. And Beers Without Beards was a great fest. We did a collaboration, Origin Malt did a collaboration with LIC Beer Project out there and Hop Culture. And we also put on a seed to sip malt school that happened the day after the fest. So we poured our beer made with Origin Malt with LIC at the fest. And then we had a great time at LIC where we hosted a malt school the next day that was open to attendees of the festival. They were able to register for a ticket and get a really intimate look at a raw material that's not often talked about, to bring everybody together around the topic of not only great beer, but how it's made and what barley malt is specifically. So it was a great time.
And how is the supply chain working? Like in terms of like you're a women-owned malt company,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
do you find that there's a different introduction that happens with women
As a
in
supplier.
in breweries and everything?
Definitely. I have an interesting perspective only because I was brought into this industry by another woman. I think that's something that's really special about my experience. My longtime friend and colleague, Kara Taylor at White Labs, she was my gateway into my first really professional gig in the beer industry. It's as a supplier, there's a lot of women, definitely, but we're also still operating very much in a man's world. A lot of our customers it's a male dominated field. So, as a female on the supply side, I definitely think that there's room for growth and diversity and inclusion. It's very much a mirror of the industry that is craft beer on the supply side.
That's
For
great. And
certain.
Catherine's back. Catherine, can you quickly introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Catherine Kyle from the Blind Tiger, which is a craft beer bar in the West Village of New York City.
That's great. So we have everyone on. So let's go to Kim now. Kim, what do you think when you hear women in beer? I mean, do you think that part of the conversation is tired out?
I don't think any any conversation about a minority is ever going to be tired out until it becomes not a thing anymore. And as time goes on, we'll see. Hopefully, continue to see progression happens. In terms of the Me Too movement happening, and now with the movement of Black Lives Matter, we should definitely see the needle pushing forward in terms of not having to have these conversations or separations in particular demographics, because realistically there's no one group that is a monolith, and if for us to think that way, it's just ridiculous. There's going to be somebody in any group that's going to like something, and I think that's what we just need to get into our mindset, and that way we can move past that part of the discussion. But I do think women in beer, it needs to be highlighted, just like everything else needs to be highlighted, so people can keep that in mind and keep it in the forefront of their brains, that it's not just, you can't just market one thing to one particular group. You have to be broad with who you're marketing towards, because you don't know who your demographic is going to really be.
And how did you feel that was done with Beer Without Beards? Because it seemed novel at the time, but looking at it, it seemed like the most diverse and exciting beer festival that's happened in New York City.
Right. I think they did an excellent job with making sure they reached out to everyone, that a diverse demographic of women, of course, at the festival. And it's very inclusive, and I really enjoyed my time there. I wasn't able to go the first year, and we had Tanya Hopkins, who works with us as our food historian. She was able to attend the first year, and she was able to show us pictures. But second year I was able to come, and we had merchandise, and had a little table set up next to Celeste Beatty, who's owner of Harlem Brewing Company. And we had a really good time, meeting people and letting them know about the bar. It was a great energy. It rained, but it people still hung in there and kept on going, So it was good. It was a good day.
It seems like rain is the new unpredictable thing when you do festivals.
Right.
Let's go to Catherine. So, Catherine, these are just introductory questions, but where have you found community in the beer world, or how have you formed your own community? Because I know Blind Tiger is a pretty special place.
Yeah, I think it is. And it's interesting. We definitely have a lot of different communities that intersect with the Blind Tiger. And that's one of the things that I really love is we get to help be a driver of community. But, obviously, I've been in the business for about 20 years. So I've seen things change in terms of like the community of women in beer. It used to be that you could pretty much like call out the people in New York City who were women, working in beer. Now that would be an impossibility, I'm really happy to say. But there have been a lot of events that have highlighted women's contribution to beer. We've had some at the Blind Tiger. We had one as a part of the Women Without Beards Festival last year, where we wanted to shine the light on all the women who worked in distribution, because sometimes that just gets left out of the whole conversation. And, that packed the bar. So there's so many different pockets of community that I think get driven all the time. But what I think is interesting is that even though there are so many more women in all facets of beer, from the suppliers to the brewers to the people who run the bars and own the bars, it's still not a driver of culture. So I think that, like, when I was listening to other people talking about it, I feel like it's we're definitely making progress, but it's still a very hetero cis white male culture, and it's slowly that's slowly changing. But it is, I think that's when we'll really start seeing real progress, is when you start seeing the culture being driven by other forces. And again, I think that is slowly starting to happen.
That's very interesting. Kim, you chose to open in Harlem. Tell us about that decision. And I want you to dive into your food historian friend, Tanya Hopkins, and how she's helped influence what way you think about things.
Well, to answer your first question, the decision to move to Harlem was based off of necessity. At the time I was become a real serious craft beer drinker, and I was just tired of driving to Brooklyn and Queens to get good beer. And there were some places in Harlem that were offering beer, but they were very German style beer bars, so it was hard to get just anything that was completely different from the norm. So that was kind of what inspired me, but also the fact that I was working on a show about beer, and I was helping them do the marketing for the show, and that's kind of what taught me more about beer, and learning more about what was being offered in the neighborhood and who was offering beer in the neighborhood, and seeing that there was definitely a void. So that was part of the initial, and it's always about necessity, you know what I mean? And then in terms of with Tanya, the food historian, I met her at a dinner party. A mutual friend introduced us and let her know that I was opening a beer bar. We were going to open up a beer bar in Harlem, and that she informed me and started telling me a little bit about the history of beer and as it pertained to slavery, and how the slaves became an integral part into the development of beer, what we would call a traditional style American lager. So in that conversation, I knew I wanted to stay in contact with her and figure out a way to implement that, or a way to creatively put that education into our concept, and make sure that people were informed of it. Because obviously when it comes to anything that someone like, just like we're talking about women in beer, just like black people in beer, people just have this association that no one outside of being a white hetero male can drink beer.
Yeah, well, maybe it's white bearded guys with plaid shirts. You know, it's interesting, the idea of driving culture. I'd never heard of that, but it makes a lot of sense. Like I know some of our friends. I think you know Joel and Matt Negron, and they've been doing some of their Bronx collaboration. Is that what you guys mean by, like, you know, driving the culture of beer? Putting your stamp on the product, Catherine?
I don't mean necessarily putting your stamp on the product, but I mean becoming more of what people think about when they think about what beer is, what the beer community is. It doesn't, you know, of course the visibility on product is definitely part of it, but really just being the people that are looked to for answers, or ask questions to, or, you know, just that are out there, you know, spreading the word. There was an interesting thing I heard where they talked about brewers that just have one name, and they're talking about like Garrett and Sam and Vinny, but they were making the case that there really are a lot of women who are one namers too. You just don't hear it a lot, like Natalie, which of course is with Vinny and Russian River, and see, right now I'm having a brain hard time thinking of it, but like Kim Jordan from New Belgium, yeah, and Carol of Carol Stout. So there are those people who are just as iconic. It's just that they're not as forward when we're having the conversations. That's all. That's kind of what I mean about, you know, driving the culture. It's like, who do you automatically think of when you're thinking of an aspect of beer, or, you know, that, you know, is just part of it.
Yeah. And so Sarah, you know, as a supplier, you're really interacting with, I know we had you on last year, the whole Northeast, so many brewers. Want to call out a couple women that are either brewery owners or brewers that you work with?
You know, that I've worked with, there's some amazing women on the team at Bell's up in Michigan that I've had the pleasure of working with, but they're not in that front and center position, right? That you would know as the marketed or media. Carly Smalls at Bell's is amazing, and she's extremely talented brewer who originally started out in Australia and then came to the States. Lots of female brewers I can think of off the top of my head right now are probably not in those heavy media or marketed focused roles. Some of the ladies on the team at Rheingeist, who we did a collaboration beer with last summer that we brought out to New York with us for Beers Without Beards, Natalie Blair, she's a badass and an amazing, talented brewer. Not the Natalie of Russian River, but another Natalie in our industry. Another one that comes to mind is Lauren Limbach, formerly of New Belgium, with New Belgium. She's their sour expert. And then I also think of Laura Ulrich at Stone Brewing, who's also obviously very involved with Pink Boots. She's the president of Pink Boots.
That's an important women's organization.
Yeah, I think it's one of the longest going, and I think it's one of the most well organized. Terry Ferendorf, she's a really talented brewer, and now she's head of R&D for Great Western Malt out in Vancouver, Washington. She started the organization, and she's outstanding.
So now we're going to switch over subjects. So for Kim, if Blind Tiger is like, you know, this temple of craft beer in the West Village, what is Harlem Hops? How do you describe it to people?
I think we are the temple of beer of New York City. But seriously, we're doing something very unique in our neighborhood that's simply unprecedented, and it's you know, partially to move the culture in terms of being one of the first 100% owned Black-owned beer bar in Harlem. But then also just, just simply, supporting the New York breweries wholeheartedly, and that being part of like our program. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people aren't doing that. A lot of people select their beers off of what the distributors select their beers from, and that's not what we do. We really curate the menu. My partner Kevin is really like a beer scientist when it comes to that, and it's something that we're very proud of, and we took a lot of pride, and it took a lot of personal investment and time and finance to get it done, and it exudes when you get there and you experience it. You know what I mean? You get a very warm and welcoming experience. We have an amazing team, and it's a beautiful space. So I'm very happy. I think we got the 10 best. We got second place in 10 best on USA Today, and I think it was very well deserved, and I really appreciate we have this cult following that's growing, and I'm excited for the future of Harlem Hops right now.
Well, congratulations. That's a big honor. How did you meet your partners, and what roles do you each have? Because that's always an important part of setting up a business.
Right. So I met my partner Stacy first. We both have event companies, and we worked on events together for a few years. And when I started working on Harlem Hops with a different group of people, and the trials and tribulations that I was going through, I was kind of lamenting to her because, we were working on a tour together, and she kind of just heard, she heard the horror stories that I was going through with that initial partnership. And when I decided to leave that partnership, she had decided that she wanted to partner with me. And the day after I left the partnership, our restaurant consultant introduced me to Kevin. And he basically said, there's a guy in Harlem that is trying to open up a beer bar, similar concept to what you're doing, and he's having issues with finding a location. So he thought it would be a good idea for us to meet. So that's how we kind of all met. And once we were able to meet in person, we found out that we had some similarity, some commonalities in that we all went to historically Black colleges and universities, which is, just a thing. It's kind of like a fraternal or a sorority type of thing. And then Kevin's wife actually went to school with Stacy's brother. So, there was like this indirect kind of connection there. And as we worked more and more together, it just strengthened our connection. And Kevin and I, for the year going before we opened, we visited most of the breweries in New York, and mostly in the New York City area, and sometimes upstate and in Jersey, and meeting all the owners and having conversations and learning more and more about the industry.
Well, that's great. And are there certain things you look for when you're selecting beer for your list? Sourcing ingredients, styles, the type of business ownership, or?
Right. So one thing I did fail to mention, the roles that we all have. Kevin is more of the beer curator. He would speak more to how we select beers, but I will give you a quick overview of that. Stacy is she kind of runs a lot of our marketing, and also our nonprofit messaging, and everything that deals with our nonprofit organization. And I'm really the day-to-day GM. We have a GM, but he and I really work close together, and my strength is also in marketing. In terms of like our curation of our menu across the board, we worked with Tanya as well, because she knew a lot. Tanya, she knows a lot about the spirits industry, and she knew a background history of a lot of the vineyards that we, selected our wine brands from, a lot of the craft spirits that we got, that we have on our menu. We wanted to find African American brands. We wanted to find female owned, small families, that kind of thing. We weren't into like anything mainstream with our brand. And the same goes for the beer, things that have, obviously taste is very like at the top of the list of things. Like you just have to have the heat. But it's also important to know the story behind the brewers. And, when if especially in situations when you hear there's being signs of discrimination, then we have to just kind of boycott that brewer and, and keep that in mind as well. You know what I mean? So you just got to be as authentic and as possible to what your brand is and what your brand messaging is.
Kim, I read about you that at your college there's a motto. What's the motto of your college that you use?
Our motto is find a way or make one.
That's amazing. It sounds like you did. We're going to talk more in a second. Catherine, for you, let's just go back with Blind Tiger. I know we had you on recently, but for the same question, especially now, what decisions go into your beer curating and sourcings?
Well, if you mean especially now, like in this post-COVID, it's different from especially now when we were open as a full bar. So which would you like me to speak to?
Why don't you talk about post-COVID, because it seems like you're thinking about that.
Yeah.
Well, that's where we're at right now. So yeah, things have changed for me a lot. I'm not running any draft beer. I'm doing all cans, and it's mind blowing to me that the Blind Tiger right now is open with no draft beer. But we've got this great outdoor seating, and so now how I pick beer is, I just reach directly out to a lot of the local breweries because they will drop by a case or two. I still work with distributors, but when I work with distributors, I, just work with the breweries that I know and love and that have a proven quality. That's really, number one is the quality, but also, just like Kim was saying, it's like you have to pay attention to who owns the beer and what's going on there culturally, and, what do you want to be aligned with? And, I'll stop pouring people if I get wind of something that I'm not sure of. I might stop pouring people for a while, then I'll take some time to really find out what's going on. And sometimes I come back to them and sometimes I don't. But again, there's so much great beer out there that you never have to pour a beer that you feel compromised in pouring. And that's something that's just really great about the beer world right now. There's so much high quality local beer, and there's so much high quality beer, all across the nation and really across the world, although those we don't get access to a whole lot. And, local is better for freshness. So, we tend to stay there more than anywhere else. But right now it's all cans. And so that's just crazy.
And Catherine, what are you drinking right now?
Oh, I am drinking Saison Bernice by Santa Adairius. And I chose that beer because Adair Paterno is one of the partners. And in addition to being a woman-owned brewery, it's a small brewery, Santa Adairius, in Capitola, California. And I'm lucky that I have friends out in California that will sometimes send me beers that we can't get. But it is delicious and tart, and it has this just really smooth mouthfeel. And I just love it. And I have not had a beer of theirs that I didn't just love. So they're really, I haven't been to their brewery, but they are on, the top of my list of a brewery that I would love to be able to go visit and check out.
Yeah, and you always carry a lot of cachet when you go too, but you know everybody, and you've really paid your dues. So at this minute, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in a few minutes on Beer Sessions Radio.
This episode is brought to you by Square. You might know Square from their little white card readers, but Square has a lot more tools that can help businesses, especially now that they're having to figure out how to safely reopen and make things work in this new normal. So many are stepping up to the challenge, like Fifth Hammer Brewing in Long Island City. To adapt, Fifth Hammer's co-owner Mary Izette created a Square online store so customers could browse available beers, build an order, and safely pick up cans from the tap room.
I was able to set up our online store within 24 hours of moving to a to-go model.
The Square online store allowed Fifth Hammer to keep beer production going, serve their local customers, and retain employees.
It's also very easy to train your staff on. They will be able to receive, fulfill, and provide your customers with a contactless pickup in no time.
If you're a business owner, Square wants you to know it has tools that can help you shift your business, like Fifth Hammer is doing. No matter if you're brewing beer, baking bread, or mixing to-go cocktails, you can start taking online orders in minutes with pickup and delivery. And if you're selling in person, Square can help you accept contactless payments. All these tools work together and they're all in one place. You just need a Square account to get started. See all the ways Square can help your business right now by visiting square.com/go/beer sessions.
Hey, welcome back to Beer Sessions Radio on the Heritage Radio Network. We have a special show talking about women in beer, and shout out to heritageradionetwork.org. So Sarah from Origin Malts, what are you drinking right now?
I am drinking a delicious, an American lager from Wolf's Ridge Brewing here in Columbus, Ohio. It's called Heartlandia, and it is 100% Origin malt, and also made with Ohio hops. So it's a really special beer for Origin. It was also one of the first customers to actually use our logo on the can as well to call out the malt and the fact that they're supporting regional agriculture. So it's a really special beer for me.
Well, that's great. So see, that is a special relationship as a supplier.
Yeah, definitely. Our farmers love seeing that on the shelves.
Yeah, so tell me about that. I want to know a little more about your supply chain. So
Yeah.
how did your malt, what malt is it? How did it get from you guys to that brewery?
Yeah, so a little bit about the supply chain. So Origin Malt started in 2015 by our founders, Ryan Lang and Victor Thorne. Our management team is comprised of 80% women and minorities, and we also have our board is 1/3 Black. We're a really proud organization and something that looking at how we function in the sphere of suppliers, I'd say that we're very different than the average malt supplier out there. So when Vic and Ryan started back in 2015, they started with barley. They started with specifically finding and identifying a barley variety that would grow well in this region and not compete with crops like corn or soybeans. So in order to do that, you have to look at winter varieties. And Puffin, the variety that we grow, is a winter variety. We found a cup of seed in a seed bank out in Colorado, and we started growing it up. We started an internal seed producing group, which is called Malting Seed Producers. It's a subsidiary of Origin Malt, and it's comprised of growers and stakeholders who also have ownership in the malt business. They're invested all the way from the seed down to the malt that's produced that goes to our customers. So it's an amazing supply chain in the sense of ownership and community that really goes into not only growing high quality barley, but making sure that our customers and consumers understand where it's coming from. So right now we have about 5 different varieties of malt, and we deliver directly, sell directly, all sizes and formats, everything from 5 pounds for a home brewer to semi-truckloads. So we're a full established business, and we also distribute with Country Malt Group, which helps reach more brewers in the community because distribution is a part of the supply chain for craft brewers, a very, very small group of distributors in our industry, but most brewers, they they're very small these days, so they need everything for one brew potentially on one pallet. So that's a little bit about our supply chain and Origin Malt as a company. My two colleagues that I work directly with, Whitney and Rebecca, we, across, I think, all of our years of experience, probably add up to almost 50 years in the industry, both brewing and malt.
Yeah, when I first met you last year, I was just so impressed at your breadth of knowledge. I mean,
Oh, thanks.
because first of all, you're the first person I know who is a malt supplier. And I heard, tell us a little bit how you got started in it. I know you had a mentor, but
Yeah.
like we
You
just
know,
think
from
honestly, sometimes I mean, I think for years people thought you just order from Wireman or you order from a company, but obviously you're an important part of it.
Yeah, I think, the understanding of a supply chain, and one thing that I always harp on and try to explain is that if we don't support American agriculture, you're not going to have that preservation of open space. You're not going to spread that economic wealth throughout your community. The majority of malt today is actually imported, either from Canada or overseas. So to reestablish that supply chain, I think is really, really critical. And then also the environmental impact. So when I started in this industry, it was my interest specifically was in brewing. Yeah, I evolved into supply chain eventually, and sales and marketing, but it was making beer. I loved making beer and I loved recipe building and I loved the curiosity and the excitement that comes with finding new flavors and um, new products. The hop industry has really evolved with different types of hop applications, from extracts to whole cone to fresh hops. We have a variety of applications in hopping, but the malt industry has seemed stagnant to me. And when I my first supplier that I worked for was White Labs yeast. Very, very dynamic and very intriguing, because yeast creates 80% of that final flavor of your beer. But what I really wanted to understand more about was the other raw materials, and malt seemed like such a mystery to me. It wasn't talked about, but at the same time, it's literally the foundation of beer. You can't make beer without it. And that to me kind of sent me on that journey of really understanding not only the scale of the supply chain on the malt side, but it opened my eyes. It opened my eyes to mass agriculture. I was first working for a supplier who was growing primarily in the biggest barley growing regions of North America, Canada, and up in Montana. And the other big industries that grow out there are Anheuser-Busch and Miller Coors. So when you think about craft beer and what really establishes the foundation of this kind of really not just a community, but an industry that sees opportunity and the ability to be creative and dynamic, I think we needed to look outside of the traditional growing regions, not only from the sustainability factor, but from the creativity and the fact that we can drive our economy here within the U.S. with more barley being grown here, for sure.
That's great. And was Ohio? Was there a history of growing malt and barley in Ohio?
Yeah, and that's what's wild, and you really have to think back to the history of beer. Some of the largest breweries were here in Ohio and in surrounding states. Pre-Prohibition, there was over 350,000 acres of barley that was being grown in Ohio, and as of, I think it was 2015, it was only 500. Origin Malt. So our supply chain is a very tight supply chain because we maintain traceability on all of our seed, because we hold the license to that variety. So purity, traceability, and transparency is really critical for us. We planted 10,000 acres, just about, in 5 different states this past fall, which is all being harvested literally as we speak. Between now and next week, almost all of those acres will be harvested, and then it'll be stored and it will go to become malt and be put into the beers that hopefully we all get to enjoy.
On a farming question, separate from how your relationship with the farmers, but the real thing is the weather. What this time of year, what are the farmers praying for in terms of weather with harvest coming?
I mean, consistency would be nice. In our region, I think, and we talked about rain a little bit earlier. We had a mild winter. It was definitely better than winter 2018. But I will say that the weather patterns have been a little bit wild. Pop-up storms. We get a lot of across our region. Coming up out of the Gulf, you'll see these popcorn storms or popcorn thunderstorms that pop up and then blow away or pop up again. For farmers, right now, barley harvests on average 2 weeks earlier than wheat, which is a good thing because growers of barley can actually get in a second crop of soybeans, which is really great not only for their bottom line, but for the soil health as well. What's interesting though is you're literally waiting on Mother Nature. You not only you want the rain to soften the ground a little bit, especially if you've gotten your soybeans in or your corn, but you need it to be dry enough so you can get your tractor in the field and so that the moisture on the barley is correct, and all of those factors. Really, it is a day by day and sometimes hour by hour job for sure.
And you might have someone renting a tractor or hiring hands and waiting around for weather too, right?
Oh yeah, it's not every farmer that just has a semi truck for sure. That is another side. Some of our growers are large growers that have that level of equipment, but some of them lease their land and lease the equipment. So those are all parts of their business that we have to manage and understand and be tolerant of, what they face in the field.
Okay, now Kim Harris, we're going to go back to you. One more time, the motto of your college is find a way or make one.
Yes.
How are you, Harlem Hops, you're a hospitality establishment. How are you guys responding to COVID? And just pour it out because this sucks.
Yes, indeed, it definitely does. But I guess when we initially designed Harlem Hops, it was important for us to, make sure that we were known as a beer bar and not a restaurant, and letting my restaurant manager know that we were a bar and not a restaurant. And that we had to do things a little bit differently in terms of, designing and structuring the business and, studying from, a year studying different models. We knew what worked and what didn't work. And one of the things that was important for us to invest in was buying a crowler machine. And, at first we would sell a couple of crowlers every week, but of course once we had to go into this model of to go and take out, everybody they just started coming for the crowlers. And my partner Kevin, he's definitely done a great job at keeping our can inventory fresh and with the hottest and newest stuff out there. But the crowlers have really done well for us too. So that's one of the things that, in terms of pivoting, that was critical for us to kind of hurry to figure out how we were going to redesign the model of the business, keeping our staff employed, but, decreasing their hours, just shifting everything into like the mindset of having more of a hybrid store model than just an actual bar. And it's turned out to be well because of course we're in a neighborhood where we don't have a lot of competition in terms of what the product that we're offering. So we have very committed and we love all of our supporters and our patrons, and they come, and then it's been helpful that we've been getting additional press, so we see, people from different parts of the city coming up as well. So it's, it's definitely, we're always on our toes. I think all three of us played basketball at some point in our lives, so so we understand how to pivot.
And then what are you drinking right now, or what should I be drinking at Harlem Hops?
That is so funny. You say that because I just took a sip of some water. I have not been drinking. I've just been cleansing over the past couple of months, and until I can get back into the bar and really have a real proper drink. But if I were drinking right now, I would definitely be drinking the one of the newer beers from the Friend Zone series. We did a collaboration with a bunch of different breweries and beer bars, and our logo is on the can of the non sequitur beers. Love Your Friends, Die Laughing, and it's a double IPA. It's like 8.5%. It's like everybody's talking about how crushable it is. I can't wait to try it. It has grapefruit notes, Pinot Gris. I think it's and they say it's super dank. So I'm looking forward to trying that soon. My partner will save me some. But we're going through that like water right now. So that would definitely be one of the first things that I would be drinking. I'll be drinking as soon as I stop cleansing.
Well, you got me craving it, so I'll get in line. I don't usually get in line, but I'll get in line for that. And let's finish up. But let's talk about beer style. So, Sarah, or let's go with Catherine. With the importance of malt, and I know we're all talking about crushable double IPAs and hops. Is there a favorite or a recommended style of beer that's malt forward that you really like, Catherine?
Well, right now I'm really loving all the dark lagers. It's become a real go-to on our menu, and that is super, super malt dependent. What I like to say about malt is that, hops get all the attention, but malt provides the real backbone. Malt is what really makes the beer, both in terms of backbone and weight and flavor, and, all these things that that didn't used to really be getting a whole lot of attention. But now people, the focus is coming back onto it. And so I think that, the malt just provides such a depth that is amazing. And these dark lagers, like I think maybe it's Fifth Hammer has a beer called, I think, Year of the Schwartz. And it's because somehow this year, a whole bunch of New York breweries just put out dark lagers and Schwartz beers. And they all swear that they didn't talk to each other. It's just what they all came to. So that's my contribution.
So is that driving culture too, where it's like a trend that everyone's figuring out?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, and we get a lot more play. Like, we're moving a lot more of the dark lagers than we ever were in the past. And and there's so many people putting out really quality ones. Like Suarez family has one of the best ones I've ever tried. And that's a complete example of driving culture. All of a sudden, the dark lagers are really in the conversation. So absolutely.
That's great. Well, I'd like if any of you have a question for one of the other, this is probably a good time to ask it. Sarah, do you want to ask one of the other guests a question?
Well, I love the topic of malt in beers, and especially knowing that both of your establishments have consumers coming in. I'd be curious to know if it's not directly malt related, but do you have consumers that ask engaging and curious? Is there a curiosity in the consumer these days in regards to raw materials or what breweries are using? I'm sure you constantly get questions about, is it organic? But I'm curious, do you feel that your consumer base and your customers are inquisitive about the process and the materials that go into craft beer in your bars.
Kim?
I think as the older we get, the more we see the, I guess, quote unquote beer nerd frequenting our establishment. So yeah, quite often I can hear my bartenders, overhear them having in-depth conversation in terms of the details that went into formulating the beer. I think, I can't really tell if it's is it just that we just have more experienced drinkers coming in, or if people are just learning to become more experienced at drinking. Either way, I think it's an excellent conversation to have with people so they can have a better understanding of what it is that they are drinking. And, I'm all about educating people for in terms of the beer culture, so that it makes sense to them, so they can understand that, it's more than just we're over here just crushing a bunch of Budweisers. This is way more, a little more sophisticated than that. And that I think that message kind of makes it a little more intriguing for most.
No, that's true. That's a really good point. And Catherine, anything else you want to say to close this out?
Yeah, I just want to respond to that question real quick, that it's one of my favorite things about craft beer bars is that there's built-in conversation. And so in terms of creating relationship, both with your patrons, customers, and between the patrons and customers, is that you just start that conversation and someone hears it and you can see them being interested. So you link those two people together and they're talking about what hops they like, what malts they like, what breweries they like, what kind of beers they like, where they've been. And that's, to me, that's kind of the nut of the whole thing, is you get people who are really, aligned and interested in a certain thing. And then all of a sudden they're pals and they come in to see each other. And, that's really one of the things I love the most about the craft beer community.
Well, that's great. Well, so great having you guys. I will say, once again, it reaffirmed that since I was in elementary school, the smartest students in the room were the girls. So thank you. This has been a great conversation, and looking forward to talking to you all again. Once again, thank you, Kim and Sarah and Catherine, for joining me here on the Heritage Radio Network. Big shout out to our producer, Dylan Hoyer, and head engineer, Matt Patterson. I'm Jimmy Carboni. We'll catch you next time on Beer Sessions Radio. All right. Woo! Beer Sessions Radio is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find us at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be part of the food world's most innovative community? Subscribe to the shows you like. Tell your friends, and please join the HRN family by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.